So in a few minutes here, we're going to tack weld that bracket that we made into place, and I have those 5/8 bolts that will help hold it in position while I do that. But I would also like, before I completely weld it in, to test it with the actual pins that are going to go through there and hold the cylinder and the stabilizer arm. These two pins here are the original, well, I don't want to say original, but the pins that I took out of there. You can see they're in serious need of some help. I've got some 5/8 stock. I'm just going to use 1018. There's no reason to use, I think, any kind of a really hardened pin. If these bend up too much, I can always replace them with something later, but I have some 5/8 cold rolled on hand. So I'm going to make them in my lathe. I'll get you guys up closer here. It's going to be a pretty simple process. You know, I'm going to cut the pieces in my bandsaw. We'll come over here, we'll face them off, chamfer the ends a little bit, go to the mill, and I'll use my collet block to drill the holes for the cotter pins that go through the ends. That's all that hold these ends, is just the cotter pin. So my lathe is a South Bend 13-inch. It was made in 1981. I had South Bend send me the serial card when I first got it. And it was originally sold to a high school in Oregon, more over towards the coast and the Idaho side. And I believe I'm the fourth owner. The guy I bought it from never hooked it up and never used it. He had it for a couple of years sitting around his shop, and finally when the economy kind of tanked and stuff, he needed the money, so he put it up for sale. So I had to drive a couple hundred miles over into Oregon to pick up this lathe. As I mentioned before, Idaho's kind of a machine tool desert. There isn't a whole lot available around here, so you really kind of have to be looking in a pretty big area. And he had bought it from a guy who was actually used it, was some type of a machinist, I guess. You know, he had a lathe mill, whole setup. So I believe I'm the fourth owner. That guy bought it right from the high school. But in any case, it's in excellent condition. Didn't really show any wear or anything in the ways, and it's been a great addition to my shop. It was a good purchase, I think. So let me get the material cut, and I'll get the camera set up in closer, and we'll get these pins made. So let's get set up. I recently moved my rotary phase converter, which sat underneath my lathe, back into this closet that's kind of around behind the lathe. So hopefully it's quite a bit quieter and you'll actually be able to hear what I'm saying. It was quite loud before. Let's give it a start. I just want to break the corner. I'm hoping I can do it here without any chatter. Just using the edge of the insert. There we go. Time for the other end. It's a nice thing about having a lathe. You can knock something like this out pretty quick. Now let's step over to the mill and we'll put the holes in them real quick, and these will be ready to go. Okay, well today's a big day. We're going to make the final push to get this bracket welded in. And I've already done some work. Let me move the camera here. Put you guys down to where you can see a little better. So I've already got the bracket in position and tack welded pretty well. Turns out I couldn't really clamp it and get a good position where I could still move the pins. So I had to kind of hold it and weld it, but you can see I've got the bracket there, and the pins are easily, both of them are easily moved in and out. So the alignment's good on that. I've got it tacked in several places, so I'm hoping now I'll be able to just weld it in without having it move and bind anymore. So watching a fat guy crawl around on the floor trying to figure out how to, you know, get some welds in here probably isn't all that entertaining. So I'm going to weld it in off camera, and then I'll bring you back when it's time for us to figure out the alignment on these brackets that go to the swing cylinder and get them in position, and we can get them welded in. And then it'll be a matter of cleaning everything really thoroughly and go for paint. And then the other thing I want to do is crawl through the other welds on this and just make sure I don't have any on the other side in the same positions and anywhere else that may need a little touch up while we're in here. I've already looked at some of them, but I've still got some more. I need to get a little wire brush and get in there and scrub them down and really take a good look at them. So we'll be back. So at this point I've completely welded in the bracket, and it's all cooled down. It came out pretty nice. And this top pin is a little bit more snug than the bottom one, but it can still be moved in and out. The bottom one is still pretty sloppy. Now I've moved it out of the way. At this point we're getting ready to put these two cylinder brackets back in here. So I've been doing a lot of stare and compare between this side and the other side and taking measurements, and I'm going to set it up the same way the other side is. I've also been looking at all the photos I took and the various measurements I took before I cut them apart. But off of this, the piece that runs up underneath the tractor, the subframe, it's this bracket on the other side is 2 1/8 off of that. So I had this 2-inch block of aluminum and this 1/8 piece of steel. So I'm using that to block up this end, and then this end is actually on top of or above one of the two pieces of channel iron that run across that make the cross members for the backhoe itself. So that one was 1 5/8 inches. So I have this 1-inch piece of tubing, and I happen to have this basically piece of scrap that's 5/8 inches. So I'm not sure where I got that. It's been used and abused, but it still measures 5/8 inches. So I've got it all positioned. It's in there nice and snug. I've loosened the other end of the cylinder just so I could kind of check it swinging in and out of there. Right at the moment my clamp is in the way. So what I want to do now is put a couple good tacks on that so I can pull this clamp out of the way and just kind of look and see how that cylinder swings in and out of there. So give me a second to turn the welder on, and we'll throw those tacks in there. See, it looks like we got that bracket in there just about right. This cylinder pivots over here, and I can't really move it too easily with the also hitting the hydraulics lever up on top. So, but it's looking good. So I would say that one's positioned well. Now, if y'all remember, we need a little bit of angle on this top plate. So I'm going to do a little more checking. I think it was 1/4 inch. I think maybe if I just shim that up 1/4 inch, that'll probably get that plate right where it needs to go. So we'll be back. Okay, so we're ready to tack in this top bracket. And I've got this piece of 1/4 inch scrap clamped in here. I ran it across the top of the cylinder, and then made sure that our bracket is sitting flush on it. Got everything pushed in, touching all the way around, pretty much ready to weld it. The other thing I wanted to show you was, our lower pin goes right in. So our alignment on this bracket came out really great. Even after it was welded in, both pins are easy to move in and out, so it'll be no problem putting the excuse me, the cylinder and the stabilizer arm back in here. So I'll get my ground clamp on here, and we'll put a couple tack welds on there to hold that bracket in place, and then we'll pull that piece of scrap out of there, and we can move the cylinder around a little bit and make sure everything looks kosher. Add ground. As you can see, the cylinder can move in and out of its pocket just fine. Got plenty of clearance, so that's good. So the next thing I'm going to do is unpin the cylinder from the back, kind of push it down out of the way. I'll weld both this bottom one and this top one in solid, and then I'll do a thorough cleaning, a wipe down, so that I can start looking at doing paint. Get it all scrubbed nice and clean. I pressure washed this before I brought it in here, but man, you just never get it all on something like this where it's pretty old, got a lot of grease zerds, it leaks oil from here and there. It just gets coated in a short period of time. Okay, time to start painting this up. We got it all welded in. I've cleaned it with some solvent, all the areas that I want to paint, which will mostly just be the bracket, and then the areas right around the welds. You could go crazy on something like this trying to paint everything. The whole thing really needs to be, stripped down and painted, but I'm not doing that now. So I'm going to use some Rust-Oleum Rusty Metal Primer, the brown stuff, and then that dries, they say, in about 15 minutes. And then you can coat it again within an hour. Then I'm going to finish it off with this Van Sickle Super Premium tractor equipment and industrial enamel that I get at a local tractor supply store. In the gloss AC Orange, which is Allis-Chalmers Orange, is a good match for these older Kubotas. This stuff dries in about a week. I don't know if it just doesn't have much hardener in it or what, but it stays soft for a long time. So we'll be shooting some of that on there. But let's start with the primer. Well, la-di-da, so much for that can. Let me grab a different one. First, just going to try a new tip. Nope. Well, something definitely wrong with that can. That's a bummer, because it's one of those 25% more free deals, but there's probably 25% of the can left in there. Let me get the new one going here. Alright, we'll let that dry. We'll come back and hit it with some of the orange. Okay, so it's been long enough for the primer to dry. It was good enough, you know, to the touch or whatever. So we can go ahead and give it a coat of the orange. So while I was waiting, I was reading the instructions on this paint, and then, like most paints will tell you, you know, estimated dry times and recoat times. They don't even have any of that on here. They don't even pretend that this stuff is going to dry, you know, anytime soon. But most of the warnings are about, you know, be careful, do lots of real thin coats, which when I've used this before, I remember this stuff, there's pretty much no way to use it without getting some kind of runs. But let's get started here. Come back and give it another coat so I don't get too many runs. And it's a tractor. It doesn't have to be super pretty, but it doesn't look good when it's totally runny either. Okay, well today's the big day. We're all done with the backhoe. I've got the cylinder on it here, and you can see our bracket down there. Now you may notice the orange looks more orange on the rest of it, and that's just normal for that paint. I know I had to rebuild the loader on my tractor before, and after about a year and a half sitting outside, this stuff will fade in and pretty much match right with the rest of the paint. And you can see the one we actually made over here. And then the other thing I did while I was in here is there'll be another little clip or two on this Plasta dip stuff. I went ahead and dipped the control levers. It's aluminum, makes your hands black if you don't wear gloves while you're operating it, so you can watch that clip to learn about that stuff. But for now, I'm going to probably stick you guys up on one of my cabinets or something, and sort of make you like a fly on the wall for do a little time lapse or something. I'm going to run a chain around these pallets or through these pallets, bring the tractor up outside these doors behind me, slowly pull this thing out until I can get the tractor hooked to it. Once I can get it hooked to it, I can hook up the, close enough, I can hook up the PTO pump, and then I can use the hydraulics to manipulate it around and help hook it up. Sometimes, even when it's sitting outside, that can be, you know, 15-20 minute deal. Some days it takes an hour. It just depends on how well everything lines up for me to get it centered properly, and then forward and back so I can bolt it on where the subframe goes up underneath the tractor. So, be right back with the time lapse.
Success.